Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Quick comm chat. Ron, can you hear me? Can you please confirm?
I can hear you just fine, Mike.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to the webinar. 5 immediate steps to enhance security within your church. My name is Mike Smock. I am Vice President of Business Development at Pulse O2DA, and I will be your host and MC today. Two experts are joining me from Pulse, Ron Danielowski, who is our Vice President and Chief Instructor, along with Bill Talent, who is Vice President of Tactical Operations. Will chime in here shortly. They'll actually do most of the heavy lifting today. The webinar is scheduled for 2 hours. We have about an hour and 20 minutes of content, after which we will throw it open to questions. For those of you familiar with GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting, over in the right-hand panel that you all should have, the control panel, towards the bottom you will see a section called Questions. Should you have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, please type them into that window, and we will attempt to either answer them during the actual presentation of content or at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to ask questions. We have an excellent mix of churches online with us today, approaching 50 different organizations, from some very small storefront churches on up to several mega churches. So within that mix there, I'm sure there are all some common issues that you're dealing with, and if you have any questions, please ask them. I'm sure that everybody will be able to benefit from the answers. With that, let me move into the agenda. The agenda is very straightforward. I will do the basic introductions and also introduce the problem and solution as we see it at Pulse. Ron and Bill will do most of the content and recommendations. The 5 immediate steps to enhance security we will present at the end of the front end content, primarily because you need to have some background as to our approach and the basic tools and tactics that you'll be working with in order to be able to go ahead and implement the steps. Before going further, I need to tell you a little bit more about each of us. Please pardon me, I'm going to read from each one of our bios because it's a lot easier to do that, and there's too many acronyms and fancy words to try to get everything into a off-the-cuff statement. So let me go ahead, and I do want to tell you a little bit about each one of us. Ron Danielowski is Vice President and Chief Instructor. He is also the co-founder of Pulse. Ron spent 25 years as a multi-agency accredited instructor, organizing, developing, implementing, and overseeing firearms training for numerous federal agencies, including the Department of Energy, Federal Air Marshals, and Department of State. He has worked extensively for Blackwater and Triple Canopy in both Afghanistan and Iraq, and deployed with the Marines to Iraq during the first Gulf War. Ron started his instructing career in the Marine Corps, where he also shot competitively for the USMC shooting team. He is a distinguished marksman and member of the President's 100 winner of the Marine Infantry Team Trophy match. You won't find another instructor out there with more experience than Ron when it comes to firearms and the training of firearms. Bill Talon is Vice President of Tactical Operations for Pulse. Prior to joining Pulse, he had a 20-year career with the Department of Energy, where he served as a federal agent, team leader, unit commander, training instructor, and manager in the agency, which provides secure transportation of nuclear weapons and nuclear materials within the U.S. He helped to found the Department of Energy's Special Response Force program, developing and teaching urban and close quarter battle techniques 2 federal agents charged with recovery of lost assets. My name is Mike Smock. I am Vice President of Business Development. Ron Danielowski and I co-founded Pulse. Prior to co-founding the enterprise, I was the managing director of a San Francisco-based strategy consultancy, which applied military strategy to business process, specifically certain aspects of maneuver warfare to competitive engagements, which is how Ron and I first got together more than 13 years ago. I have 30 plus years experience with startups and turnarounds, evenly split between consulting and running operations. Before jumping into the problem and then on to the solution, I first need to tell you a little bit more about Pulse and what we do. And to do that, I'm going to take you on a very brief tour of our website. Not unlike our backgrounds, the offerings and our methodology will flavor the steps that we're going to recommend to you at the end of the webinar. Pulse offers combative firearms instruction. We train individuals, teams, and units to defend life and property. The solution that we will be presenting today, the steps that we're going to be recommending today, begin at the moment that a threat materializes. We don't do de-escalation training. We don't provide electronic surveillance. We don't do passive threat assessments. We're there when the shooting starts. We train you and your team to eliminate the threat. Our instruction is delivered via courses and programs. We provide basic firearms instruction, combative firearms instruction, and programs for individuals, teams, and units. We also sell a set of manuals that we have written, a total of 7 manuals that begin with the strategy of a gunfight, then go through the basic fundamentals of handgun, shotgun, and rifle, and then take the fundamentals up, what we call our training ladder, which Ron will talk to you a little later about, and then take a look at applying those fundamentals in individual scenarios, basically in the home and on the street, in team scenarios, in the defense of a business, church, or school, and then in unit scenarios where we're looking at the defense of a neighborhood or community. The hub for all of our training resources is an online resource that we call the O2DA Battle Academy. This hub, this digital hub, has all of our training methodologies, the content from all of our training manuals, videos, training plans, plus an in-depth interactive library that includes all the source material that we have used in order to develop our approach and our methodology. The online O2DA Battle Academy is a membership website. It is a subscription-based business model. Users pay approximately $14.95 a month in order to access all of the materials in there. Everybody here will get a free 14-day trial into the Battle Academy so you can work with the various resources that we'll be talking about. After that, we have several options for you should you decide to stay in the Academy and or if you might want to take a look at some of our other offerings. So with that tour complete, I want to talk a little bit about the problem and the solution. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, primarily because I think we're all aware of the problems that all of us are facing. At Pulse, we happen to think that America is on the verge of massive civil unrest. We're not going to go into a lot of explanation there other than to say that between race, culture, religion, socio-economic and various geopolitical forces. All of those at this point are colliding in what we think are totally unpredictable ways. At the forefront of these collisions are religious institutions. We happen to think that the religious institutions are under attack from many different fronts. And as we saw last week in Charleston, can be subjected to attacks in both expected and entirely unexpected ways. We also believe that the past is not prologue to what we are facing today. Over the past 400 years, the world has enjoyed a somewhat stable environment. Certainly, we've had our share of war and violence, but we think the past 400 years isn't necessarily a prologue as to what we're going to be facing in the near future. We think both state and governmental security and conventional security mechanisms that we've all grown used to in the last 50 years won't necessarily be there in the near future. And with that, the ability to cope with these unknown dangers, not just from the standpoint of law enforcement, but also the legal system and insurance. The chance of those various structures being there for us in the future is diminishing. And with that, what we see at Pulse is the need for a different solution, a different look at how we provide for our security, and one that basically goes back to what most of us are to a certain extent already aware of. For us, the solution to these security issues revolves around developing the strategy, tactics, and techniques necessary to defend life, family, business, school, church, and community from violent threat. And from our vantage point, what we see is the development of what we call networked self-reliance. In other words, individuals taking responsibility for their own defense. That includes learning basic firearms capabilities, along with the strategies, tactics, and techniques necessary to defend not only their life and property, but also to come together as teams in the defense of business, churches, and schools, and with that culminating in working with other teams in order to form units to defend community and neighborhood. At Pulse, we've developed a bottom-up training process to develop basic firearm fundamentals on handgun, shotgun, and rifle. Our methodology then applies these skills to individual tactics for self-defense, then followed by learning the team tactics necessary to defend business, church, and school. And I said the culmination here is in learning the unit tactics then necessary to defend actual territory as defined in neighborhoods and communities. We believe that churches and businesses are at the forefront of developing these networks. Churches and businesses because churches represent the cultural and religious spiritual center of communities, and businesses because they provide the economic engine. Unfortunately, it's still a fact of life that it takes money to defend yourself. It takes money to purchase weapons and ammunition. It takes money to train. And within that, from the standpoint of developing a network of self-reliant individuals to take part in that, one of the more important aspects of that will be where does the money come from in order to pay for those various aspects. Before turning it over to Ron and Bill, I want to take you into the O2DA Battle Academy and very quickly show you what it looks like. Again, the O2DA Battle Academy is a member-only resource. It is accessible to individuals, to teams, and to units. I will talk to you at the end of the session about various options for you to continue your free trial after 14 days if you should desire to do that. But this is the inside of the Battle Academy. Inside here, we first start off with what we call fittings, which are training regimens for different training objectives. We have fittings for individuals, a very basic fitting. We have an advanced fitting. We have team fittings for businesses, schools, and churches, which is what we'll be spending a lot of time with today. And then we have unit fits for neighborhoods and communities. Ron here shortly will take you into some detail about what's involved in a fitting and what the fittings look like. We also have a full complement of training videos. These are fundamental videos for the various weapon systems. This is the videos along with our manuals represent the heart and soul of the O2DA Battle Academy. Ron will go through these with you in a little more detail, but each one of these videos describes a specific technique or fundamental that a person needs to learn in order to be an effective defender of life and property. Our manuals and case study are also here in full HTML. There is an enormous amount of content here. When Bill is up, he will be pulling from our team tactics manual and telling you more about team tactics from the standpoint of applying them to a church environment and to the defense of a facility such as a church. We also have several training plans. Our Kickstart training plan is very popular. It is a 5-day plan designed to get a novice into basic knowledge and awareness about gun ownership, including not just the 4 safety rules, but also going all the way up to what it means to actually have to kill somebody, should you ever find yourself in that situation. We also have a 12-month plan and various dry practice options. We have, in addition, all of our, as I said before, all of our source material in our iLibrary. This is an interactive library that will allow you to search and research all of the base documents that we've used in pulling together our methodology and the source documents, the source content that we've used to write the manuals. There is a forum, an online forum for all of our members where they can discuss various aspects of their training. Each member also has their own profile that they can monitor, including their various subscriptions. So that is what's inside the O2DA Battle Academy. And with that, what I'm going to do now is step off stage, and I'm going to hand over the controls to Ron Danielowski. Again, Ron is a co-founder and our chief instructor. Ron is going to talk to you about firearm fundamentals and basic individual tactics that are relatable to a church scenario. And when Bill is done, when Ron is done, then Bill will pick up and talk specifically about the team tactics necessary to defend a church. When both Ron and Bill are done with the basic content, then we will go into a detailed list of the 5 steps you can take in order to immediately enhance your church security, including immediate activities that you can do in the Battle Academy while you're in your free trial. You and your associates may want to do. There will be a complete list of all those activities. And when the webinar is over, everybody who attended will also receive an email following up with all these various links and offers so that you have that information in one place, including your complimentary credentials to get into the O2DA Battle Academy for the next 14 days. So with that, Ron, if you can hear me, you are now on deck. I am going to hand off the controls to you.
Okay, can you hear me all right, Mike?
I can, and you should have control.
I do. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Mike, and I want to welcome everybody to the Church Defense webinar. As Mike mentioned, my name is Ron Danielewski, and I am the Chief Instructor here at Pulse Firearms Training. And what I'd like to do next is kind of pick up where Mike left off. I'd like to introduce you to our training ladder, give you a guided tour of the Battle Academy, and introduce you to some of the resources contained inside. All of these are things that you can tap into immediately after this webinar with your free 14-day trial. In particular, I'm going to look at how the training ladder works with the fittings and how the fittings tie into firearms fundamentals and how these combine to produce a solid base for gunfighting in the individual student, which better prepares the student for working in small teams. I'll conclude my portion of the webinar and turn the presentation over to Bill Talon, our Vice President of Tactical Operations. And Bill will show you how we take the tactically proficient individual operator and integrate them into the teams and units for the defense of businesses, churches, schools, neighborhoods, and communities. The training ladder that you can see up on my screen is based upon our own gunfighting methodology, and it's developed to convert a gun novice and gun owners into competent defenders of life and property. If you look at the training ladder,
Ron?
it is at the core of our... Yes, can you hear me?
I can. It doesn't appear that you're sharing your screen.
It doesn't? Hold on here. I'm sorry. Go to the webinar. Says it's showing screen, on air showing screen. Are you the only one not getting it? Bill, can you see that?
Yes, there it is now. We're good to go.
Okay. Let me know if anything else pops up there. The training ladder is at the core of our training resources. It moves a firearms novice down here toward the bottom through 4 distinct stages of skill development, and I'll show you how this works by tying it into the fittings. The training ladder begins with mastering the basics of handgun manipulation and maneuver in personal defense scenarios for the individual operator, and it coincides with the basic individual fit, which you can see right here. The basic fit is designed for individuals with little or no firearms experience who are interested in learning how to use handguns for self-defense. As you can see here, when a student comes in, we have different highlighted areas around our training wheel that include our training programs, our training manuals, our supplemental modules, and our training courses, which you can see mirrored over here as well. From this individual fit, what we do next then, pull this up. From the individual fit, we apply those basic firearms fundamentals to individual maneuver for self-defense in the home and on the street, and augment the basic fit by adding the shotgun and the rifle to the individual operator's skill set. And that's what you're seeing down here and here as well. This sets up the training ladder, and it concludes with the advanced fit on that basic rung. And the advanced fitting is designed for serious gun owners and offers a key fundamental techniques and tactics needed to effectively defend against a lethal force encounter on the home or in the street. The advanced fitting not only trains the individual on the handgun, shotgun, and rifle to better round out their tactical skill set, it places an emphasis on combative techniques such as clearing hallways, rooms, staircases, and even covers outdoor scenarios as well, as we add in the individual tactics manual and reinforce those. And so here with the handgun, shotgun, and rifle, you can see we have the handgun, shotgun, and rifle drill manuals as well that augment that training. And ideally that'll top off with what we call a Master of Chaos course that deals with reality-based training, where we take individual operators, place them in scenarios against other live human beings, utilizing non-lethal firearms training aids and other non-lethal training aids such as like foam bats, batons, etc., and teach them how to deal with real-life threats, whether on the street or in the home. And you can see that takes us up into this area of the training ladder. Once the individual has developed those, let me get back over here, back up there. Once the individual has developed the proficiencies and the basic firearms and maneuver skills needed to operate safely on their own, we augment their skills by teaching the small team tactics necessary to defend businesses, churches, and schools with what we call the team fit. The team fit is for individuals with a solid grasp on both their primary, the shotgun and the rifle, and their secondary weapon systems, which is usually the handgun, who are interested in learning how to exponentially increase their combative effectiveness by expanding their sphere of influence and working with other individual operators as a team to defend a single objective. It's kind of germane to you because we're talking here about businesses, schools, and churches. The team fit is a solid benchmark for church officials and their parishioners. At this level of training, the church couldn't be more secure if a SWAT team were pre-positioned just outside your doors. At this juncture, what I'd really like to do here is stress that the mastery of the basics and the advanced fitting skills on the tree here it should really be considered a prerequisite for the team fit, because the real power in fitting above the advanced fit level, which is right here, really relies on the individual's ability to both be able to exercise his talents on his own and, just importantly, work effectively within a team environment. Because once all is said and done, your team is only as strong as its weakest members. Finally, as we conclude at the top of the training ladder, teams learn how to work together in defense of specific territories, utilizing unit tactics for the defense of neighborhoods and communities with their unit fit. I'll go ahead and pull that up here. So we're at the top of the training ladder now. And the unit fits exponentially increase the effectiveness of the teams by expanding their sphere of influence in order to defend their neighborhoods and communities in times of crisis and civil unrest. These unit fits are the epitome of a decentralized security force, which we're all trying to drive towards. Keeping the overview of the training ladder and the fittings at the forefront of our minds, let's now take a look at our online training resources in the Pulse O2DA Battle Academy. And what I'd like to do is show you what this resource looks like from the student's perspective. If I come over here to the home page, and give me a second for this to load, pull it down. As you can see from the home page, we've made the Battle Academy easy to navigate and use, and we provide multiple links through the materials throughout the first page and every page thereafter. As you can also see, we provide a step-by-step guide for new users at the top of the page. And steps 1 through 3 are administrative. In 1 through 4, however, it takes the reader to the fittings page and introduces them to our fittings and provides guidance in helping them select the fit that's right for them. We've already talked about the fittings a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the basic fit now so you can see what a student would see his first time in here. Here at the basic individual fit page, you can see we give the student a broad outline of the skills that we will be learning, and again provide multiple links to the educational and training resources that they will be heavily interacting with during their training. Just below this diagram here, you can see that we provide 7 simple steps to master the basic individual fit that covers everything from weapons familiarization to what types of weapons and equipment they will need in order to complete this fit. For the second step, right here, the student will be able to begin their training by previewing the 5-day Kickstart training plan, which you can see is highlighted here in blue font. Throughout the Armory, when you see blue font, it signifies an embedded link, and you should click on that link in order to dive deeper into the training. I'm going to go ahead and click on this now. Here in the 5-day Kickstart page, you can see we begin with an introduction, followed by the 5-day training plan, which concludes all the way over here on the right side with a test. At this point, I'm just going to click on the 2-day Fundamentals tab, Day 2 Fundamentals tab, and you'll notice that the top portion of this box gives a brief outline on what the student will need to focus on in order to complete the day's study assignments. I'm going to click on the Read More button, and you're going to see the entire day's study plan laid out below. Here you can see the course of study, and as a general rule of thumb, you're going to see the course material is set up in 3 columns. These columns allow for sure and fast assimilation ideas, as well as a quick access to additional training materials and resources should the student decide to rabbit trail or dig deeper, going beyond the basic outline that we outline for them here, and we encourage that. In this left-hand column, it contains the course content and lesson plans where students will read through and follow the provided instructions for that day's lessons. In the second content, in the center column, you're going to find the supplementary contents such as tips, white papers, articles, and such. And then in the right-hand column, we provide additional links and tools, and not coincidentally, this reflects the navigation bar at tabs at the top of the page in order to make navigation easier and faster for the students. Okay, back to this page now. Throughout the course of study, as I mentioned, you're going to find embedded links that when you click on these, it'll take the student, the adult learner, to the appropriate subject matter being covered. For instance, if I scroll down a little bit here, I'll come down to Chapter 3 in the Handguns Drill Manual, which deals with what we call the chamber check, mag check, which we will direct you, the link itself will direct you to the corresponding materials. I'll go ahead and do that now. All this drill material is very similar. So when you click on any drill, you're going to see an introduction paragraph up here at the top. Brief drill video that they can click on. These are usually chunked into 2 to 3 minute segments or lower, and a descriptive narrative and photos which describe in detail the specific skills being learned, and just importantly, the text describes why the technique was chosen. Since I'm here, we'll go ahead and take a look at the manuals. In particular, what I'd like to get us over to at this point is take us over into the team or the individual tactics manual, and I'll give you a brief outline here. Once the individual has navigated through and worked their way through the assignments, a lot of these are tied into, for instance, the individual tactics. Here in individual tactics, we do everything from cover what is a tactic, the strategy of winning a gunfight, etc., etc. A lot of this is descriptive nature and text, where the student's going to have to do a lot of reading and take in the information. But this is also augmented by an awful lot of graphics that describe what it is the student will be looking at. So for instance, we explain different concepts that are relevant to the fighter in here. We take and explain everything in excruciating detail, how the techniques themselves work in this. why it's important to utilize your cover appropriately, and then the minutia behind that, and what that has to do with saving your life, so forth and so on. Once the student finishes his 5-day training program, which we were just at, let me take you back there. Let me go back here, fittings. That would have been easier. Once the student finishes his 5 days going through all that material, we can take him through the 12-month plan, which is going to take him through all 3 weapons systems, the rifle, the shotgun, the handgun, in order to round out their proficiencies and give them the maximum flexibility in order to address the most likely defensive scenarios the individual operator is going to face. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Bill so he can outline for you how the aforementioned training ties in with our holistic approach to a decentralized security solution.
All right. I hope everyone can hear me, and I welcome you to this part of the presentation. And you should be seeing the first page of the Team Tactics Manual.
I do see that.
Okay, very good. All right. Ron has spoken at some length, feeding you through the fire hose, about how we bring individuals up through individual skills training and individual tactics training. And now at the team tactics level, we start integrating the individual operator into what we like to call a micro team, which may be anywhere from 2 to 4 individual operators working together, which is clearly a very synergistic concept, which enables them to undertake security operations far beyond the ability of any individual. Now, the Team Tactics Manual will goes into considerable depth. If you look here over on the table of contents side, in Chapter 2, it talks about exactly what those synergistic elements, those force multipliers are for a small team, how we recruit the team and train it and develop it. But this manual goes far beyond that. And the reason is that we are focused at this level, as we say in the title, on the defense of businesses, churches, and schools, essentially what we call a protected locale, which we define as an area within the property boundaries of a business or a church or another private entity. A protected locale could be as small as a single-family residence or a small business or a church, or it could be as large as an apartment building or a multi-building complex, but all encompassed within property boundaries that clearly delineate the area in which you can freely operate within the law. Now, given that, what sets our approach apart from most others in this field is that we recognize that securing a protected locale depends on very much more than just firearms or tactical skills of individuals or even of small teams. We need to create the conditions for those teams to succeed in a crisis. And in order to do that, what we've done and what you'll see on this quick tour of the Team Tactics Manual is that we've adapted concepts and methods that are proven to succeed from the military and law enforcement and intelligence world to make them usable by private citizens in a domestic peacetime environment. And what I'm going to do here is to recognize the fact that we've already given you a whole lot of information to digest and that you're going to have an opportunity to dig into these materials in some detail. I'm just going to give you a quick top-down survey of what's in this manual. If you look at Chapter 3, External Factors, what we do in this chapter is we introduce a threat assessment methodology that allows you to characterize and analyze and prioritize all the potential threats to your own property or your own operation. And the reason, of course, is that you cannot afford to waste limited time and resources on threats that are both very unlikely to occur and of minor consequence if they do occur. We also, excuse me a minute while I navigate. You'll see that our discussion of threat assessment methods is pretty extensive. And again, I'm not going to get into it in detail here because you'll have time to digest it at your leisure. We also, in this chapter, talk about evaluating assets, which in this case, an asset is a source of assistance or support that is outside of your direct control, but which can provide support for you. This would include law enforcement agencies, emergency services, other public and private organizations in your area that you have a relationship with. And the key element of clearly identifying these assets is that you need as much prior coordination as possible with these assets long before a crisis breaks. So we discuss how to identify them, how to characterize them, how to determine what level of support and on what timely basis you might be able to expect that support from such assets. Then we go down to chapter 4, which continues the top-down analytical approach, which is the background, the setting the stage, setting the conditions for success. It introduces a site survey methodology that you use to characterize your site in much the same way that the previous chapter had you defining and characterizing your threats. And once you've done that, then you perform a vulnerability analysis. And vulnerability analysis is based upon your site survey that characterizes your own location and your own security capabilities, and your threat assessment, which characterized your potential threats or adversaries. And in the process of conducting that vulnerability assessment, you will begin to focus your attention on the most likely and most dangerous threats, which allows you to, avoid that waste of time and energy on things of lesser potential consequence or less likelihood. Okay, then we go to chapter 5, leadership and planning. And again, our approach here is different than what you might find elsewhere. We do deal considerably with the challenge of organizing a 2 to 4 person team for security or tactical operations. We go way beyond that because, again, our environment and our conditions are distinctly different than what you would find in a law enforcement tactical or a military environment. Our belief is that we have to, even at this level, emphasize initiative and independent, decentralized decision making and the planning process, because these teams that we envision, they're not like a military fire team of 3 or 4 persons. They may not be a part of a larger force. They won't be under the positive control of a higher chain of command. There's not a squad leader or a platoon leader prepared to give them orders when a situation arises in front of them that doesn't meet their expectations or their prior direction. So we, among many other things in this rather extensive chapter, we discuss initiative-based tactics, elements that some of you might recognize if you have military backgrounds. We discuss commander's intent, the concepts of implicit command, situational awareness, recognition, prime decision making, all of the things which enable individuals, both individuals and small team leaders, to operate in a decentralized environment, exercising initiative and staying a step ahead of an adversary. Our belief is that small team leaders must be able to appreciate the broader environment, things that are beyond the immediate reach of their 5 senses. They need to be able to anticipate the opposition and to act quickly and decisively in the absence of orders. In the next chapter, we introduce a format for presenting tasks, and it's again maybe familiar to some of you. It's the task condition standard format, and we also introduce a concept of taking those defined tasks and placing them into an ordered hierarchical list of security-related tasks that is specific to your site and your organization, and that is what we call a mission essential task list. A mission essential task list is specific and particular to your circumstances. No one, I cannot, for instance, write one for you. You will write that for yourself when you've mastered the concepts involved. We do provide also in this chapter, you see here the task catalog. The task catalog is an extensive list of fully formatted and developed security-oriented tasks at levels that start at the highest level of a business or a church, and that speak directly to the leadership and management of an organization. And let me show you an example of what I'm talking about here. So you can see we're still up at probably the 10,000 foot level, where you create and you manage a security cadre. You recruit and sustain personnel for it. You organize it, equip it, manage its training, establish its training requirements, and so forth. We step down from there through a cascading series of levels where these organizational tasks then lead us to security tasks, which speak to the functions that any security cadre will perform under normal operating conditions. In other words, before the crisis, before shots are fired, or before anyone is threatened. And these include things like observation posts, guard post operations, patrols, routine patrols, and then responding to an alarm or a distress call. So we provide, again, a very extensive set of tasks here. I won't get into it in any detail here, but you'll find over here in the contents column, we do drop down into small team tactical tasks, where we talk about what the tasks that a small team may perform when things go kinetic, when shots are fired, and it's necessary to actually engage to defend lives and property. From that catalog, you and your staff and your personnel can then pick and choose, go shopping in that catalog, and construct a mission essential task list that helps you establish priorities for your own planning and organization and training as you move forward. Then we go to Chapter 7, Wargaming, which is a very, very low risk and low cost tool. Requires minimal resources, very frequently nothing outside of a classroom or a meeting room. It's extremely useful in the vulnerability analysis process that we talked about earlier, extremely useful in planning and in operator training and in developing and training leaders especially. We discuss in some detail in this chapter a series of tools. The first of which is very simply the seminar style wargaming, which we affectionately call a bunch of guys sitting around a table, or BOGSAT, that's the technical acronym, which is simply an unstructured group discussion about threat scenarios and appropriate responses. And then we dig into some more structured and useful techniques, including the one you see on the screen now, the tactical decision game, which requires nothing more than a PowerPoint slide or a flip chart in the front of a room that presents an immediate tactical situation for the participants, whereafter we simply ask those participants to digest the limited information they've been given, devise their solution to that immediate problem, and be prepared to stand up and present and discuss that to the group. We go from there into other more, somewhat more resource and time-intensive wargaming techniques. We talk about let's see here, tabletop wargaming, of which the sand table is one example. Basically a a small-scale model of your location or environs, and many other techniques that are available out there. One of the most effective wargaming techniques, excuse me, is in fact the terrain walk, which simply means taking leadership and security cadre and walking the grounds, walking your buildings, doing a close eyes-on survey of everything from entrances and exit points to the security of doors and windows, considering possible tactical implications should a threat materialize, and all of these things can be done just by walking your grounds in shirt sleeves and discussing what you see in front of you, and what appropriate responses might be. So you see very briefly with this quick walkthrough the scope of the Team Tactics Manual. It concludes with a chapter addressing after-action reviews. An after-action review is something that we conduct after any training or real-world operational event, because we're firm believers in the concept that if you do not conduct a debrief or a review with all involved participants, then much of the learning value of any situation will be lost. So we give some very specific and detailed guidance for how you conduct an effective after-action review for your people. And there we go to the end of the Team Tactics Manual. Let me take you with comparable brevity over to the Unit Tactics Manual, which, as Ron said, is focused upon essentially a higher level. In the Unit Tactics Manual, we adapt and we developed a lot of the concepts that we see in the earlier Team Tactics Manual, but now we apply them to a larger area of operations, one that would encompass, in many cases, many, not one, but many protected locales, which may be interspersed among other private and public properties. So, for instance, it could be an urban neighborhood or a rural community where not necessarily everyone in that community or everyone in that neighborhood is an active participant, and this creates some interesting problems for planning and organization and community relations. The unit manual also addresses crises and threats on a larger scale than we've looked at before. They can include natural disasters, for instance, hurricane and earthquake, or riots or civil disorder of extended duration, such as the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles that went on for the better part of a week, impacting a very, very broad part of that city and county area. In the unit manual, we dig a good bit deeper into the challenges of planning for defense and security and conducting it in that larger public environment, while staying firmly within the bounds of the law, because we certainly never recommend acting outside of or in contravention to the law or in opposition to local law enforcement. In fact, we only address these areas because increasingly, as Mike alluded to, increasingly in some areas of the country, we find that police response is delayed and inadequate, and can often be only an after-the-fact response that assists in managing casualties and taking reports and cleaning up. If we didn't face that situation in our society today, we wouldn't have a need for this, but unfortunately we do. So you'll see in the unit manual, we introduce and develop several concepts to help in that larger environment, and you see them here: community observers, community patrols. These are functions not too much different than the classic neighborhood watch model, but if it's done carefully with appropriately trained and prepared individuals, then it may be, in fact, a neighborhood watch with teeth. We discuss the creation of an operations center to manage and coordinate the operations of patrols and observers. And we talk about the very problematic issue of reaction teams, armed teams that can operate in response to a crisis, somewhere in the community. We also discuss in the unit tactics manual the very considerable and generally unique challenge of taking a voluntary association of citizens who, at this level, are not necessarily united by family ties or business associations or church affiliation, and turning that diverse assemblage of individuals into a viable security organization to include organization, planning, leadership, and training. And we also, in this manual, then descend back down into the purely tactical realm, adapting the individual and small team tactics that we've presented elsewhere into the larger environment and into a scenario where multiple isolated individuals and teams are cooperating together to respond to threats. So with that, I'll step away from this short walk through the team and unit manuals, because we want to get down to the meat of this, and that is to share with you some ideas that we have distilled from this large body of material that constitute immediate steps that you can take now to secure your institution, a church in particular, against the active shooter threat. And let me talk through an outline that you will find this outline when you open up your trial access to the Battle Academy. You'll find it right here under the Manuals tab, Case Study, Church Case Study. And let me walk you through this, and I'll speak in a little more detail here than I have about some of the other manual contents. Here's what we feel that any and all of you should be able to do with a minimum of preparation time and prior training or effort. Okay? The first of these steps is you have to create your own reliable security cadre. You cannot, in most cases, unfortunately, rely upon timely police response in the event of a lethal crisis on your property. Now, how do you do this? As it says here, we suggest that you find volunteers within your congregation, preferably who have concealed carry permits, which implies in every state, although laws and protocols vary, it implies a certain level of background checks and documentation of training requirements. So find people who have concealed carry permits, approach them, and ask them to volunteer to come armed onto your property and to provide armed security during public gatherings there. Now, how do you do this? There's a great deal of discussion of this topic in the Team Tactics Manual and in the Unit Tactics Manual, but it boils down to this. Even amongst that rather select population of concealed carry permit holders, it will be your responsibility to select individuals who have some credible small arms training. Now, that could come from private sources like Pulse. It could certainly come from law enforcement or military service. But a certain degree of vetting of your volunteers would be advisable. Early on, you will need to appoint a leader for your security efforts who combines those kinds of qualifications with some leadership experience. And once you've done that, then you need to turn him loose to a considerable degree and delegate the execution of the rest of these measures to that person. It would be extremely advisable to attempt to identify other members of your community or your congregation who may be armed on their own initiative while on your property. And that, as it says here, is for your safety as well as their own. In a crisis, when weapons come out, one of the greatest threats to everyone involved is misidentification. Being able to tell the bad guys from the good guys is a key fundamental, and you generally and your security cadre particularly do not want to be surprised unnecessarily. So if they are not tied into your security efforts, you at least need to know or have some idea of who they are so that you don't misidentify them in a crisis. if you can't enlist them directly in your security efforts, then at least ensure that your security cadre has some idea about who else on the property may be armed. Now, aside from that, we suggest that you augment your armed security cadre with other individuals, and this could be staff or anyone within your congregation who is willing to contribute to the effort as simply as alert unarmed observers. Now, their duty is simply to watch for and report suspicious activities and persons. This requires that you recognize suspicious activity for what it is. We'll discuss this a little bit farther down in point number 3. And then finally, the last point I want to make about the security cadre is that you have to have, depending again upon the size and scope of your facility, you need to have reliable communications between your security personnel, your observers, and your leadership on site. Networked cell phones can suffice. Handheld radios with discrete earpieces can suffice. This should not be too much of an obstacle to you. It's something that you can implement, usually with minimal expense. You'll see a list of references here that point to specific chapters and sections in our manuals that discuss some of these ideas in greater detail. Now we come down to the second point, and this one again is very important, and that is the security personnel who volunteer to assist you in this project. They need to be able to identify each other quickly and confidently and with great assurance. And usually the way we approach this is an IFF identifier. IFF is Air Force lingo for identification, friend or foe. If you look at any television coverage or videos of dignitaries who move with security details or politicians with Secret Service protection, you'll find that the security personnel will wear distinctive lapel pins. You may be able to designate specific items or colors of clothing that can be changed on a regular basis. The ability to change these identifiers is very important, because one thing you must realize is that if you were ever to be targeted by an active shooter, historical experience tells us that these are not impulse crimes. They're crimes that are planned and prepared generally weeks and months in advance. So if you have a highly visible and predictable security plan in place, you had better figure that any potential adversary is going to be watching it and attempting to identify its strengths and its weaknesses. So identifying your security cadre in a way that you and they can reliably identify, but that is not immediately apparent to a potential aggressor, will do you great good. Come down to point 3. Vigilance is the most important single element of this on an ongoing basis. You have to watch parking areas, adjacent public areas, entries to your grounds and to your buildings before and during all events. You may, depending upon the level of threat that you perceive, you may want to restrict the number of entry points, have only one or a few doors open and unlocked and available, depending upon the complexity of your site and the number of observers and security cadre that you have. And here is a psychological piece that is extremely important, and that may be difficult to instill in some of your people, but your armed security folks and your unarmed observers have to become very proactive, very lean forward in their attitudes. They need to be prepared to identify suspicious activities or suspicious persons and then take action. The action usually is no more than communication. Bring it to the attention of other security personnel. Keep eyes on those people or that activity. But there's a rule there that you see in quotes that says, if it looks suspicious or out of place, it is. And if that sounds like If that sounds like profiling, which is one of those dirty words in current language, I'm sorry, but suspicious persons or activities usually, very, very often do in fact mean trouble, and so your people need to key on that and respond to it in an appropriate fashion. Our fourth point is aid, and that is simply that if an incident like this begins, swift emergency medical response to any injured people is vital. It will save lives in the event of an incident. You will have undoubtedly you will have some level of law enforcement and emergency medical system response, but emergency medical first responders will not enter your property until the area is secure, and so your response time and the assessment and clearing and delay may mean that that level of medical response to people injured on site can be very, very slow. So what I would recommend you do is ensure that you have many well-stocked first aid kits on your property, and that just as you did with your security cadre, attempt to identify persons in your congregation who have any emergency medical training and request their support in the event of an incident. This is not something that you would want to improvise in the moment unless absolutely necessary. And finally, the fifth point here is this one. That is that you must coordinate with law enforcement agencies. I will presume optimistically that you have good relations with your local police. I think you need to be proactive. Talk to your local police agency. Let them know all these steps that you are taking to enhance your own safety. Talk to them about protocols that they will respect and appreciate, that would allow them, if they respond to your property, to identify your own security personnel quickly and effectively. Because when they respond to a report of a shooting and they arrive on scene and they see people with weapons drawn, the great challenge for law enforcement personnel is to identify, who is the adversary and who is the defender. Very difficult for them to do. Your people need to think about that in advance, train for that eventuality, and you need to talk to your local responders about how to accomplish that form of contact or link up safely and effectively. And finally, by doing prior coordination with law enforcement agencies, you can ensure to your own satisfaction and, importantly, to their satisfaction, that all the steps you are taking remain firmly within the law. You don't need legal exposure. Protecting life and property is paramount, but you need to protect yourself against unnecessary legal consequences. So there are the five steps. I think that happy to discuss any of these in greater detail with you. You find that we've provided some reference to the Battle Academy materials that go into some more depth on all of these topics. But there is something else that we want to discuss here briefly, and that is this: that the purpose of these 5 immediate steps is to give you some actionable items, things that you could start working on tomorrow. But the day after tomorrow, your next step is to establish a training plan for your security cadre. And we say this because regardless of the level of individual experience or prior training that those individuals bring, shared training is necessary to build the necessary confidence and cohesion that will allow them to work together as a team. So I'm going to hand off to Ron again and let him talk to you about some baseline recommendations for that training program, which is present on this same screen, which I believe Ron will open up for you. So Ron?
Bill, can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you do me a favor? Can you keep control
Sure.
of it? Just scroll down there for me.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. Okay, so Ron, take it up. Away.
Okay. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that, Bill.
Sure.
I'd just kind of like to trailer on what Bill just outlined in the 5 steps you can do to immediately enhance your church security. Again, this is the day after bringing everything online. In particular, what I'd like to do is kind of circle back around to what's been discussed, and even earlier on in the presentation, to the premise of the individual tactics, which is that the individual tactical's proficiency is a prerequisite for both the individual success and advanced tactical work with their teams or their units. Now, keeping that in mind, I've got a handful of recommendations, kind of bonus material for you folks here, that your identified security cadre can undertake immediately. And when I say immediately, we're talking as soon as you get off of this, you can, once you've identified your people tomorrow, they can start hopping into the Armory on that 14 free day trial and start working on these things. The first recommendation here is that each cadre member immediately start working their way through the individual basic fit that I showed you earlier, and we provide the links in there under the fitting tab in the Battle Academy. The next step is each cadre member should visit the Pulse O2DA Dry Practice Guide. Again, it's linked in here. Read it, follow the advice in it in order to rapidly assimilate those fundamental handgun techniques in their skill set in a fraction of the time it would take a normal shooter of equal skills to achieve with just live fire alone. That dry practice is invaluable. That guide will walk you through how to select the correct place to dry practice safely and walk you through the procedures you need step by step to dry practice safely, because it can be lethal if it's not done correctly. So definitely the dry practice guide is something you want to get and hold on to. The third thing we have for you here is that cadre members should visit a nearby range on a regular basis at least once a week, and you want to do this to confirm what they've been practicing in the dry fire. Now, what that's going to start to do is work on those individual skills. The individual operator, that's what we call the individual who's handling the gun, needs to have available to him at what we call the unconscious competent level. That is, he needs those skills available to him without having to think through how to clear a malfunction, where he needs to move, et cetera, et cetera. Those things need to be ingrained in his unconscious mind, so when he's under stress, under duress, he knows what to do without having to think through the procedures. The next thing now is we're taking that individual focus and we're kind of moving that toward the teams, and the recommendation here is that the cadre members, as Bill mentioned, in particular the leadership, should read Chapter 7, Wargaming, in the Pulse O2DA Team Tactics Manual that Bill took you through, and select the wargame techniques that best meet your current planning and training needs and capabilities. We cover everything in that wargaming, as Bill said, the tabletops, the toots, tactical exercise without troops, the terrain walks, et cetera, all the way through using video games, if you will, that electronic technology, first-person shooters, et cetera, to get your team to work and think together. And so definitely get in that wargaming section and check that out to start getting the teams to team members to think alike and start predicting how the other man's going to move and what's going to need to be done. And finally, if your cadre completes the above recommendations, I encourage you to contact us for a copy of our reality-based training guide for small teams using airsoft. Airsoft is a non-lethal training firearm. It shoots little plastic BBs. It doesn't leave paint marks, but it can be quite painful. And it's available on the market. You can, I'm sure Walmart still sells it. Plenty of internet sites sell them. And you need the guide because the guide will outline the very important safety procedures needed to train and win the fight of your parishioners' lives there in the church. So I'm going to turn this over to Mike, but before I do, I want to let you know that we're always here for you. I'm sure there are going to be a ton of questions. If you don't think of anything at the end of Mike's presentation here, please email us, talk to us, and we'll be happy to help you any way we can. That concludes my portion. I'm not sure if Bill has anything else. Other than that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Nothing further, Ron.
Okay,
Mike?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Bill. Well, we have, I hope, provided you with the information that you're looking for. And I'd like to summarize. And go back to the essence of what we think is the solution, which is a decentralized form of security where businesses, churches specifically, form the node, the central node of a network of self-reliance composed of individuals who are able to competently defend life and property. The next thing that I want to conclude with, and I'm just looking at a question here, I want to tell you a little bit more about our various offerings and what the next steps are here as far as accessing the information that we've been talking about. While I'm doing this, if you have any questions, there have been a couple that have come up here. Again, there is a box towards the bottom of your control panel. It's called questions. Open that up, type your question, and we will attempt to answer it for you when I'm done describing the offerings, and that'll be in a few minutes here. So again, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them in the window below there. From the standpoint of accessing the content that we've been talking about today, first of all, everybody who has attended will have a free 2-week trial in the O2DA Battle Academy. You'll have access to all of the content that's in there. It's more than enough time to make your way through the 5-day kickstart, or for a member to make it through the 5-day kickstart. The 5-day kickstart training plan that Ron was talking about doesn't take 5 full days. It actually takes about 10 hours. And then the test at the end of it takes about 15 or 20 minutes to go through the test. So the first line of access here for you will be the free 2-week trial in the Battle Academy. Next, we will send out an email here shortly when we're done with the webinar that will have your personal credentials for getting into the Battle Academy. And with that will be a link for you to download the PDF version of our first manual, The Strategy for Defense. And in that, we talk in much more detail about the concept of network security and building your own private security capabilities within a community, within a neighborhood, even a small village. After that, after your 14-day trial, if you want to continue with the content, individual memberships will be available at $14.95 per month. And if you want to bring a team from your church into the Battle Academy, we can offer a team of 6 a special deal of $59.95 per month for all 6 of you, which cuts the price down to about $10 per month per team member as opposed to $14.95. Last but not least, and very importantly, we are also offering a on-range training course, reality-based training course. It's our Master of Chaos Tier 3 course for individuals. This is a 3-day course. It is $895 per team member. For churches, we will be running a couple of dates this summer for churches here in Illinois. If you are interested in bringing your team members up to one of our Mach 3 courses, there will be a link and further information in the follow-up email that will tell you more about how to take part in those training opportunities. So those are the 5 different offerings that we have for you as far as using and accessing our training resources and approach that we've talked about today. But as a church, I want to talk to you about one more opportunity that I think that some of you may find of interest. We've shown you all the content inside of the Battle Academy. Hopefully you see some value there. And hopefully you will see value not just potentially for your cadre members that may become part of your private security team, but hopefully you will also see some value in there for your individual members. And to that extent, if you're interested, we can offer an affiliate program for a church whereby the church can offer the O2DA Battle Academy to its members. And in doing that, collect 50% of the monthly subscription fee that would result from each member that enrolls in the O2DA Battle Academy. So for as long as they stay subscribed to the Battle Academy, you will receive 50% of their subscription fee each month. Now, we've done this with several groups in the past, and it is can be a very effective way of funding your training and for the members to get more than just access to the Battle Academy, which by itself is very valuable. But in this case, 50% of their monthly subscription fee would then go back to the church, and you could use those funds in order to help fund your security team. As we all know, a security team costs money. Somebody has to buy the weapons and ammunition and pay for the training. So if you're interested in this affiliate program for your church, again, there will be information in the follow-on email that will tell you how you can go about finding out more information about how to bring that program to your institution. So in closing, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We'll be answering questions here in a second. You will get a follow-up email from us. It will likely be later on this evening, possibly tomorrow morning. And as Ron has said, if you do have any questions, you can email us directly. You can call us directly. We are reachable essentially any time of the day or evening. One of the things that we did not put up on the offerings that we will go into the email is the fact that we also do on-site engagements. If you would want to bring our team out in order to train your team on site, I know there are several larger churches here in attendance. We do on-site engagements, and there will be information on that. So with that, let's get into the questions. Bill and Ron, I'm going to unmute you, so hopefully there won't be too much static here. Okay, Bill, comm check.
Yes. Yes.
Ron?
Yes, I'm here with you.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. All righty. Let me see. I'm just going to go down the questions here. We have 7 or 8. First question is, what do you recommend for a church with multiple points of entry with only 1 to 2 staff to monitor during a service? Bill, I'll hand that off to you.
Sure. Let me address it. I did take the opportunity to type in a quick response, but essentially, I believe that what you need to do based on your appreciation of the threat level is you need to have at least an observer at every one of those points of entry, at least during the high traffic periods, probably prior to your service beginning. And so this is where you're going to have to rely upon volunteers from within the congregation, armed security cadre, if you are able to manage that. If not, at least an observer with a means of communication that can identify suspicious activities or individuals. Once your majority of people have arrived and your service begins, I would highly recommend that you close and lock all but 1 or 2 points of entry, and of course advertise that to your congregation so you don't inconvenience people unnecessarily. But the points of entry that remain open should be only as many as you can maintain direct observation or control over, and that assumes that that your other points of entry are equipped with push bar doors or other forms of that will allow emergency exit in the event of a fire or an emergency. That's usually a code requirement. But if you can meet that requirement, then I would say limit your points of entry only to those that you can maintain observation on, and if that requires the use of volunteers, then I would get about that.
Okay, Bill, next question I will hand off to you also. Should we or not inform the congregation of the forming and presence of the security apparatus?
I believe that you should. You will all have to make that decision, based upon sort of social and cultural questions. I think that particularly in current times with recent events, I would imagine that your congregation would be relieved and comforted to know that you were in fact taking some efforts to secure the property. I think that your announcement or your information that you put out does not need to be overly specific, but this would be the simplest way for you to solicit volunteers to assist you in constructing this security organization.
And a follow-on question from the same person: should they, parentheses, the congregation, be briefed what to do in an event of an active shooter?
I think that is absolutely important. I would do this in a rather deliberate fashion, which means that you need to perform at least an abbreviated form of threat assessment and vulnerability analysis that will allow you to come up with the most effective plan before you begin to communicate that to the congregation. But this is a process that does not differ significantly from the one that schools and public buildings go through now. They usually have multiple hazard response plans, which are fully developed and publicized and shared within the building. So yes, I think you need to develop plans or alternate contingency plans for an active shooter incident. Make them available, communicate them. Of course, that you don't want to communicate them in a way that actually raises the apprehension or fear level of anyone. But I think that I think in fact again you'll develop considerably higher levels of comfort and confidence when your congregation understands that you've considered the threat and have developed some response to it.
The flip side of that also is that in these times, churches in the past, at least in recent history, have always been a place of refuge and safety. I think for many members, especially older folks, this is going to be a very traumatic and hard to digest topic. And I would highly recommend that your church elders get together first and decide, just how, if you do want to do this, just how you want to describe it to your congregation, because it's quite chilling when, especially again, the older members sit down and actually consider the fact that they might have to be defended in their place of worship. Okay, next question. Do you have guidance on the issues of individual and church liability? Bill, I'll let you start and then I'll pick up on it.
Sure. It's hard to provide. Well, certainly I'm not an attorney and I can't provide legal advice, and it's difficult to provide general advice because every state and every local jurisdiction has differences in the legal climate in statute. But generally speaking, the issues of liability, and I notice that we have some other follow-up questions, in the same vein. The issue of liability is one that, at this level, these 5 immediate steps that we're talking about, essentially, if you communicate and coordinate and provide some level of organization and oversight to individuals who are already licensed by your state to carry a concealed handgun, then their liability will be unchanged from the liability that they have walking down the street with a concealed weapon on their person. Their restrictions and the abilities that they have to utilize force will be unchanged. They will be able to utilize lethal force under the circumstances outlined in your state and local law, which generally is in defense of themselves or others against an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm. Since they're not paid employees, I don't think that their situation is going to change significantly from that. Any individual, in my experience, every individual that I have ever worked with or trained with who has a concealed carry permit is extremely cognizant of what those limits of behavior are and what the potential liabilities are. So that would be my answer on the individual level. For the church, and I think Mike will speak to this also, in this litigious society, there's no guarantee of freedom from potential liability, but again, you're not talking about organizing a paid security contingent, and that might provide you a certain degree of protection from liability concerns. But of course, everyone with a telephone and a lawyer's phone number in his Rolodex is capable of creating those kind of problems if he chooses. Mike?
Yeah, I think there's a significant amount of personal discretion here when we start talking about the liability side. Most lawyers will be very cautious about this approach. Remember, lawyers are paid to say no. Unfortunately, for many out there within the legal community, they would rather see a couple of dead bodies on the floor and no lawsuits, as opposed to a dead active shooter who didn't take anybody out. Because with a dead active shooter, then you more than likely inviting yourself or bringing on some potential litigation issues. In the individual tactics manual, we do go to some length, and I believe it's the final chapter, to talk about legal landmines and what you can do and avoid. But from the standpoint of I guess the most cogent advice we have, it is know your local laws, interface with law enforcement, make sure they understand what you're doing, talk to your attorneys about what the liabilities are, and then you make your own decisions based upon that input. We certainly can't make that decision or provide advice to you on that issue specifically. Okay, next question is organizing your own private armed security force legal. Again, kind of tailgating on the last question. I can take that question and answer it quickly here. Again, this comes back to your local laws, state laws, local community laws that will dictate to a great extent what you can and cannot do. Also, law enforcement, their input and their advice is crucial to what you do and what you don't do. But if there is any question as to the definition of what you're doing there, if it actually falls into a category of a private armed security force, one of the options that we always recommend that we will research and look into right off the bat is the idea of setting up your own private armed security guard business. And most states have fairly rigid licensing requirements and process to go through. It's generally not very hard to meet those hurdles. But worst case scenario, if you're highly concerned about potential liability or if your state requires it, you can just simply go ahead and set up your own private security guard business and operate it on your facilities, and potentially, again, part of the networked idea here, you could even potentially start reaching out to your neighbors and other people within your community in order to help with their defense. Okay, let me see. Last question here. Do we approach a suspicious person or not engage and call police? Ron, are you there?
I am here, Mike.
Okay, I'll let you take that question. You're most suited to answer it.
Yeah, I would say it's a good question, and it really boils down to yes, both. You should approach a suspicious person and start engaging there. And remember, our training deals specifically with that contact, not the de-escalation, etc. But yes, approach, and then at that point, if it's important enough to approach and you're concerned, then somebody ought to be on the horn to local law enforcement, especially if things start escalating, he starts acting erratically, etc. And again, who should make the approach? Well, it should be the trained personnel in the church who can deal with things just in case they get out of hand. But most of the time, that's going to be something that really focuses on your training, your ability to handle that. And again, that boils back down to the reality-based training. Bill, would you want to trailer on that?
I would add to that simply that when we look again, if you drill into the considerable body of research that deals with active shooter incidents, that most of these events are insidiously and you know, forgive me for calling it evil, but the people who plan and conduct these events take their time about it. They choose their target. They spend weeks or months preparing and planning. And in almost every case, they choose targets where they do not expect armed resistance. This is why we see gun-free zones, schools, churches in some cases, public buildings, where armed security is either inadequate or not present at all, and where private citizens are not legally allowed to be armed. They steer well clear of areas where the defense is apparent and obvious and capable. And so this comes back around to this. If you have a person who is considering your premises as a target, he may very well spend time visiting your church, essentially doing recon. And if he finds that when he arrives on your premises, and if he is acting, if he is a strange face, or if he's acting in any way suspicious or unlike the congregation and the public that is normally there, if he finds that on every such occasion he is approached politely by a staff member or a volunteer and engaged in congregation, you may very well succeed in discouraging him from any further action against you. So I think taking a proactive approach, certainly within the bounds of courtesy and normal behavior, would yield great dividends, and I highly recommend it.
And one last comment on that. Once again, churches are supposed to be welcoming areas. They're supposed to allow people to come together, congregate in safety. The idea of approaching a person with suspicious intent inside of a church is foreign to everybody, because that's not the way, at least most of us have been brought up in the church. So this is another notion that needs to be addressed carefully, thought about carefully, because it requires a 180-degree change in behavior, at least for some of the people within the church, which is why it's always good to reach out to law enforcement and military folks, because a lot of those people will already have that mindset established, and they'll be able to cross that divide. So with that, I don't see any other questions. We told you 2 hours. We're 20 minutes light. Hopefully you appreciate that. I know the speakers do. We will then go ahead and close the webinar. You will be getting an email from us either later today or first thing tomorrow morning with your credentials to get into the Battle Academy, along with PDF versions of the Strategy for Defense. And then you will have various links for accessing the options for the offerings that we've been discussing. So, and for any churches interested in talking about the affiliate program, the affiliate opportunity, again, there will be information in the email on how you can do that. So with that, thank you for attending, and please have a good day.